you, by creating that definition, really finding the flag you want to plant and then making sure your entire team is help pushing it deeper. That's how you're going to end up getting that sliver that you want and making sure that you're the dominant player for that sliver.
Welcome to the Omniscient Buyer Show, where AI, trust, and buyer behavior collide. Hosted by Andy Helko and Tony Zayas, this show explores how modern buyers are using AI to research faster, verify claims instantly, and demand radical transparency from sales and marketing teams. If your buyers already know more than your sellers, you're in the right place.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode. We're going to talk about pattern consistency, basically how AI judges your brand across the entire internet. So we were talking real-time fact checking last week, which I thought was just an interesting conversation. It's a cool topic. But Andy, what's the big change that this brings about, this whole concept of pattern consistency?
Yeah, I think, we're really getting into the answer engine optimization space here. Right. And so one thing that we think about is search engines. They, I always had said they really were looking for relevancy and quality. And there were various signals to that. Relevancy would be like links, inbound, quality, could be the writing, etc. And I really think AI engines follow suit. Relevancy and quality, it's probably different signals, but there is kind of a new piece with, I think, answer engines compared to search is this, consistency and contextual mapping. If you understand AI engines at their core, they're really connecting words in trillions of patterns that are connected, right? That they've read all of these different texts and they've said, okay, this word connects to this word 10 million times, and this word connects to this one 9 million times. And when you ask this question, I'm going to do pattern recognition to figure out, okay, what's likely. So it's this huge, crazy map of words being connected. And so now one of the things you want to think about in your content creation, what you put out on the web, is that you want to make sure that AI engine can connect those dots. And so one of the things that you think about is if you phrase things differently every time, everywhere, especially brand name stuff, product name, tagline, if you have core statements about what you do or a core positioning, you say it a little bit differently every time. It's different context. And so that mapping of words is not going to be as strong. And so one of the things that you really want to look at is developing some sort of system to at least maintain a certain level of consistency and context across everything so that the AI engine can appropriately map that together and give it, the strength that it needs to say, okay, when this gets asked, this feels consistent, it feels, deep, it feels strong. I will return it because the signals show that these things belong together, right?
Right. So is there also kind of like with SEO, the concern of duplicate content? Do you see that?
Actually, it's an interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting topic. I think we talked about duplicate content with SEO a lot, is that Google wanted to see original. They didn't want to see things copied. I would say, here it's an interesting thing of, I don't think we want duplicate content because that's probably negative for SEO, which it is. And I think for the AI engines, they probably will take exact duplicates and basically say, okay, this one just maps over that. There's no value to it. So I think probably the same thing that we talked about with duplicate content in SEO, we would be talking about in AEO.
Right. What is the red flags for someone running a brand, running a business? What do they need to be looking out for in what is being said like elsewhere about your business, your brand, your product? How does that play into it?
Well, I think that's one of the things we can't control, right? Is what other folks are saying. But I also think that is one of the opportunities that we need to look at is how do you own phrases? That's one thing I'm really looking at as, we develop our own strategy and we work with clients is how can you start to own some phrases where you use them consistently, use them often. And it's a mix of two things. One, informing these AI engines, but I think also it's creating pattern recognition for the humans that you interact with. And so when they go out there and they talk about your business or they go out there and make a review, hopefully some of that pattern recognition makes it in there. And so I really talk about, how can you start owning some phrases like for us, buyer centric. I've really, both of my books talk about being buyer centric, where your company wraps around your buyer. And so we've been really using that phrase, because other folks use similar ones. But we've really honed in on, okay, that's what we're going to call it. And we're just going to make it very consistent. So if we talk about buyer psychology, it becomes, this is also buyer centric. If we talk about buyer intent, or we talk about personas, or we talk about, customer psychology, all of that for us, we always make sure that it's tied to this buyer centric, which is a little bit more unique and specific to our brand. And so that to the AI engine starts becoming something that, if someone mentions buyer psychology, oh, Incivia has this buyer-centric philosophy. Here's what it means, because it's created that context.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We've put a lot of emphasis focusing on AEO and trying how we get found in AI engines and all that. It's something
Tony,
that
what have you seen as you're looking at some of the AI optimization and this pattern, consistency?
I was going to ask about the idea of old content that's been published. Is there any idea for like going back to doing content refresh, rewrites, anything like that with this all in mind, with the pattern consistency, thinking about terms that you're using? Is that an opportunity that exists?
Yeah, that's something that we're actually doing with a lot of our clients and even ourselves, is going back and to that point, old content that maybe we didn't talk about the buyer centric or buyer psychology. It's an opportunity to infuse it, because I think one of the things is that pattern recognition again, as you go forward in AI engines, you want it to be able to look at your business and property and say, okay, this is what it is. And the more, I guess, distinct and diverse that you are, it's harder for it to triangulate, and understand and point and say, this is who they are, and I think a lot of companies want to have diversification because they want to make sure they're open to everybody. But we've talked about this for years. If you try and reach everyone, you don't reach anyone really well.
Right.
And I think that is very much the case with AI engines, that if you're trying to be super diverse, if you're trying to reach everybody, if you're trying to cover a million topics in a different perspectives, it doesn't have that ability to create the connections enough to triangulate you. And so instead of feeling like you might show up for a lot of things, you show up for nothing. Whereas if you create that consistency, context, really connect the dots between everything, at least then you will dominate a sliver of those responses. And if you do it right, you're dominating the right sliver that delivers the right customers.
Right. And that makes sense because people aren't going to AI engines to get generalized information. They're going deep, right? The deep research option. That's where people want to really dive in and understand things. So this becomes, I think, even more important when you're looking at content for AEO.
And I mean, if you audit the content that you have and you look at it and you say, like, let's say a web design company talking about manufacturing web design, the idea is going to be, this has been talked about a million times. There are many ways that this is done. And it's like, okay, well, what is your powerful, unique viewpoint on this, and what is the sliver that you own, and how do I contextualize that with 40 other things that you've created that also, create that consistency with that sliver. And so if you're just creating an article of like manufacturing needs web design and it's important, AI engines are going to just see that as just generic slop that's everywhere, and they're going to deliver a generic answer if someone asks about it. They're not going to reference anybody, because they're going to be like, this is common information. It's everywhere. Why would I reference a specific company? But if you can provide something hyper unique or consistent, that's where now it's going to say, okay, someone asked about this topic. Here's an angle that is only in one place. Let me infuse this, right?
And I think that idea of what is your viewpoint, we've talked about this, but that's where, the content for content's sake that people were pumping out for sake of ranking, that's what's different about this is you want to take a stand. You want to share something that, to your point, is unique. So I think that becomes more important. And that's something that is picked up and noticed. Bless you.
Thank you.
We go through, as you're getting found in ChatGPT and Perplexity and all the tools, is kind of that take on things and your consistency in having an authoritative, thoughtful response. I do think that is getting picked up.
I keep thinking in my head is like, where are you planting your flag and how deep are you planting it? And it's this idea of like, okay, I want to take something, I want to really plant my flag there so that like the AI engines see that context, they see it. And by planting my flag, deeply, I've got to create all this consistent context across multiple things that give it that depth. And so I've just been really thinking about with clients, our own stuff is, okay, how is this helping me, more deeply plant this flag for our company in this idea or this realm, right? And if I'm going somewhere else, I'm planting a smaller flag that's shallow, and I'm going somewhere else, I'm going somewhere else, I'm going somewhere else, the reality is no one's ever going to find, like the AI engines aren't going to surface that because it is so, shallow.
Right. More sporadic and shallow, to your point. So before we wrap up, if you were to give, 3 actionable steps that someone that's working on, refining their brand and trying to get traction in AI engines, what are the 3 steps that someone can go out and take?
Well, I think it is creating a brand and messaging strategy. Sit down and, create something that is unique to you, define it, create some terminology around it that is very specific. If you can, think of it as coining phrases and ones that all connect together, and create this. And I think then the next step is, document it, turn it into something that is real and tangible, and then make sure you infuse it in everything. Give it to employees so that it's utilized in anything that they create, because documents find their way into AI. So this means this language should be used in project documents or things that you send in follow-up emails. It should be used in, pretty much every aspect of the business, and every employee and every initiative should be trained on this, central brand language, because again, all of this stuff finds its way into AI engines at some point, and it's creating consistency and context. So you, by creating that definition, really finding the flag you want to plant, and then making sure your entire team is help pushing it deeper, that's how you're going to end up getting that sliver that you want, and making sure that you're the dominant player for that sliver.
Yeah, that's a good game plan. I think the whole way that we look at content creation and almost everything that we create that is publicly published, we now have a new way to look at it and consider it for consumption of the AI tools that are out there. And it really is, I think, an opportunity, as we've seen a crazy pickup in this calendar year of just people finding us through Not just search. It used to always be Google, but now it's ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and all the like. So
For sure.
Really cool stuff. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We will be back next time with another topic. And thank you for tuning in. We'll see you.
Thanks for listening to the Omniscient Buyer Show. If this episode challenged how you think about buyers, sales, or AI, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. For deeper insights on AI-powered buyer behavior, answer engine optimization, and modern go-to-market strategy, visit insivia.com.